Stephen Turek. And today we have a special episode. I'll be interviewing David Selby, who most of you know was in Dark Shadows. He played Quentin Collins. Also Falcon Crest, where he played Richard Channing. And he was in multiple different movies and TV shows. And he also does a lot of different theater work. And he's written lots and lots of books. So he's a multi-talented man. Welcome to the show, David Selby.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And he's still plugging away. So, so whether you tune in or not, I'll be doing something somewhere.
Yeah, you still have movies that we'll get to later on that have come out this past year and that are coming out this year. So I mean, you're constantly working. I mean, what can you say? It's your talent is still in demand.
Well, it's just where I, come from. Work. That was my mother and dad, So it was always that kind of thing, So work was ingrained, from the moment you get up in the morning till you hit the sack. So you were, you were a worker.
Oh, exactly.
Anyway, yeah, but you mentioned that. You mentioned those two television shows, which, believe me, I was grateful to have and was terrific. And but I did, as you mentioned prior to me once, about being in theater, and that's how I started, in doing stage plays.
Exactly.
And I still do them.
Now, what led you to go into acting when you were growing up? What was it something you saw? Was it something that your parents did, or was it just something that just happened by happenstance? What led you to?
Oh, Stephen, I have no idea. I mean, I was a dreamer. First I wanted to, I would, I don't know, when I was a kid, junior high or high school, I was watching a couple times. I'd watch a few times, not a couple times, a lot. There was a show called American Bandstand, and it was Dick Clark. And I, when I was young like that, I wanted to, I thought, hey, I can, I'll sing, I'll do whatever. Of course, having no idea whether I could ever do that. Then when I hit college, I was in a production of Oklahoma. First production was Brigadoon, and he got to sing a song. Now, all of you come to Sandy's booth, come over to Sandy's booth. And then Oklahoma, and where I played Will Parker. And so I thought, that's pretty nice. I never thought about anything else. I just wanted to do. Then I thought, well, I can do plays if I can't, do whatever, sing a rock song here and there. I'll do this. So I started acting. I finished out doing plays. I even did a play, Euripides. I think it was Oedipus Rex. I think it was, yeah. And it was a classic play. And I found that I really appreciated, or I don't know, I just tuned in to the seriousness or what it was about and all of that. And I thought, oh, this is terrific. So from there, and I went out to Illinois because they offered us money, my wife and I, to come to school out there we got assistantship. So we did that for a year and a half or so. And then I ended up at the Barter Theater, which is not too far from where you are in Maryland. It's down in Abington, Virginia.
Okay.
And I went down there. I went up to Chicago audition, then I got that job down in, because the school I went to was Southern Illinois University for a while. And then I went up to, that was where I received, you got it, that other degree. But I went up to Chicago audition, headed down to the Barter Theater in Abington, Virginia, where I did a lot of plays, including Beckett's Craft Glass Tape, a lot of different plays back then.
No,
Go ahead.
One of them you did. I don't know which theater it was in. Was Inherit the Wind.
Inherit the Wind. That's when I came back. Yeah, I was came to do some summer stock in Illinois, and Inherit the Wind was one of the shows, and absolutely loved doing it. And it's a wonderful piece. In fact, today, if I could play John Henry again, I mean, I think I would. I think I would like to. Years later, after that, not too many years, a few years later, I went back and did it after summer stock. I did, it was a lot of years later. Ed Asner and I did a reading from Inherit the Wind for a broadcast out here in Los Angeles. And that was terrific. It's a wonderful piece of theater.
I got to ask you, because Ed Asner, what was it like working with Ed Asner? I mean, he's just one of the consummate actors that I've seen. You know, he says everything seems to come. I think, what would they say? It's natural, where he's saying the line and he's making it sound like it's fresh for that first time for that character.
That's Ed. Ed is terrific. He and I did several shows together for a thing called the Los Angeles. It's a radio theater. You go in and you record plays before an audience. You do them live. You read them, but the audience is right there, and there are microphones, and they record them for posterity. On radio, they record the shows, and then they offer those tapes to various schools throughout the country, this and that, and that's how so Ed and I did a number of those, and he is just, he's a terrific fellow. What can I say?
Because that's what L.A. Theater Works.
L.A. Theater Works. You got it. Susan Lowenberg runs that group. That was her baby, and I was in on right there at the beginning of it, and we started a group that decided, we'd record novels and things like that for radio, and somehow, and Ed was there then, and then Susan moved her group over to, we moved first out to a hotel out in Santa Monica, and then we moved over to UCLA, where she still to this day does some shows out of there, and that's But Ed was always a big part of that. In addition to his, wonderful work elsewhere. So he was a theater man.
Oh, I can just imagine working with him, because he's such a legend, and
yeah,
and yourself too. But I mean, putting the two of you together,
yeah, he's quite special.
And I know, speaking of Theater Works, the reason I know that is because I saw you had done Judgment at Nuremberg.
Judgment at Nuremberg, wasn't that for the L.A. Theater Works?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. It was indeed. We recorded them all. In fact, I think I was looking not too long ago through some of those recordings, and I have copies of the ones I did. Yeah.
Are those available?
So we did those all, and they're out there for posterity, and you can still go online to LA Theater Works and order from their catalog. They just, have, my goodness. We started that group back in the mid-'80s, so it's still going strong.
Oh, you anticipated my question. I was going to say that it was available to the general public, and there we go. It's people can.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be something special, especially since nowadays audio broadcasting or is on the uptick, because people with their commutes or just wanting to hear something when they're doing a walk or a jog.
Exactly.
It's like the old days with the old radio. Everything's coming back again in that audio format.
That's right, Stephen. Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
eventually you ended up getting on film for TV with a little show that some people know called Dark Shadows. How did you end up getting onto Dark Shadows? Because it had been around for a little while before you came in.
Before I came in, yeah. Eventually what happened was we ended up in New York because, you know, I wanted to act. And, so we were after the Barter Theater in Abington, Virginia, you know, and after Inherit the Wind and all of that, I mean, just a lot of things. I was at the Cleveland Playhouse, and then from the Cleveland Playhouse, I went right to New York. And out of New York, I started doing, you know, off Broadway shows, and right away, and then did a national tour of a play, came back, and I ended up doing Dark Shadows because a wonderful lady, casting lady, Marion Doherty. She was a big casting person in New York City. And I walked in, and she said, "Where have you been?" So we shared a laugh, and she put me in a cab and took me up to meet the creator of Dark Shadows, Dan Curtis. He had an office on Park Avenue. So we went up there. I ended up doing a scene with him for my scene partner, at that time. Her name is Kathy Mann, but we took a class together under Win Hanman in New York City. And Win was the founder of the American Place Theater. And it was the American Place Theater that I did my dissertation on, that Win started. Anyway, I did, you know, with Kathy, I did that audition. Dan Curtis said, "Okay, come on over to the studio, and we're going to look at you on camera." So Marion said, "Okay." So we went, and I just stood there in the studio that was on 53rd Street at that time, that ABC had built to house Dark Shadows. And then he looked at me on camera, and the next day he called me and said I had the job. So then I went down to the studio for the next, I don't know, 7-8 weeks, whatever it was, and I never had a line. I never said a word. I didn't speak. The character was silent, and I was always grateful for that because it gave me a chance to, you know, think about that character and what I wanted him to be. Get a relationship going with the writers and the other actors on the show, which was very special. And it is special to this day.
Well, that's what we like to hear. I mean, I just find it interesting with, as you said, you played the ghost of Quentin for a while, and you did a lot of, I think, a lot of great acting with just your body language, your facial expressions, getting across that he was very malevolent at that time.
Yes. Yeah. He also had some wonderful theme music that was written for him by Bob Cobert. And Bob recently passed away. And Bob Cobert was an absolute genius at composing. And he did all of Dan Curtis's things. He later would do Winds of War, you know. But Bob was terrific. He, when I would appear, you'd have the gramophone there. The character was silent, Quentin's theme music would play. And then eventually they wrote words for me to say. And so Bob says, "Let's record this." So we did. And that theme song went on to be in the top 10 in the country for a good while.
Yeah, it was a big hit, which I'm sure was made him really happy and you happy also, because it's like,
well, it made me happy because it took me back to music, and I said, "Hey, I can do that right here," you know. So Dark Shadows was my it was a good thing, and it's actually I'm going to write a little something about all of that. But Dark Shadows was my answer to the late 60s, or say 65, 66 through 70, 71, 72, to all of that music that we were listening to back then. You know.
Oh, yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying. And the interesting thing with that daytime soap opera is the breakneck pace. How was it for you to, I mean, obviously, I guess as you said, it was really good. Your character was silent for a while. So
yes.
it gave you a chance to adjust to the tempo.
Right. Well, the tempo, yeah, it was, you know, you shoot one episode a day, every day. There was a period where I did 30 or 35, I can't remember, episodes in a row. And so every day, so you start at 8 o'clock in the morning. You go in, I would walk down from my apartment and get there at 8. We would read the script again. And then we put it up on its feet, block it a little bit. Then after a couple of 3 hours, a couple hours, we go downstairs to the studio and put it on in front of the camera. It's a 3-camera show. So we'd block it there, and then after another hour or so, we'd start shooting. And we had to be finished by, I think, as I recall, I'm not sure about this, but I know we had to finish at a certain hour. And I think it was about 4 o'clock, because otherwise we lost the cameras to the West Coast news feed. So there was no way that they wanted to stay over. And a couple of times we did. We didn't make it. But every time we finished, so the West Coast news feed could go through. This was for ABC Studios.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there any truth to the rumor that you had a favorite donut? Because they'd have donuts there. You know.
Well, there was a Sara Lee banana cake, as I recall, that I made a mistake of mentioning that I liked. So the studio was flooded with Sara Lee banana cake.
I guess there's too much of a good thing.
Too much of a good thing. We donated a lot of those. I had to carry them up there. There was a group up at Lincoln Center, you know, for food, charity, you know. So those were all donated up there, things like that. But it was a wonderful thing. That's just one of the things that the fans did, you know, for me over the years, which I truly loved.
Well, they definitely loved the show. I was born in '68, so I came into it when it was in syndication, and and really enjoyed it because my eldest brother, who's 8 years older, would watch it, and he remembers, you know, coming home and watching the show, and so he would be the one telling me, "Oh yeah, you got to watch this. This is, you know," and you always listen to your eldest brother, you know, when he's telling you about something cool.
That's right. Well, you were born during '68. That's actually when I went on and started doing Dark Shadows. I think my first appearance was in the fall of '68. But, you know, during that time of '68, it was a brutal time. And I had been doing theater right straight through. You know, in '67, we were in Cleveland, where we had to stay beginning of '67, I think, into '66, '67, where we were advised not to go straight to our hotel, or straight to the Howard Johnson's hotel and stay there, because there was a riot going on. There was unrest in the streets. And then later, when I hit New York and I'm doing this national tour, The Impossible Years, with an actor named Sam Levine, and we're playing Detroit among the many cities. In Detroit, we were advised to please be careful because of the rioting that was going on. So you were born during a very, I don't know, pivotal year as far as what we're witnessing or going through today. Stephen. 68, of course, you had the assassination of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And New York City was hard up for money, keeping the city going. It was a difficult time. But anyway.
Oh, I agree with you. It was difficult times during that period. But then with Dark Shadows, your character is interesting because you start off as a ghost, then and then of course you're human, and then you're also a werewolf.
Yeah.
And then later on you get a mind transference, where with I'm trying to remember the character's name, but I think it was Fair David.
Fair David.
Oh, and then you have to act like, I guess, him, and he has to act like
who
you.
Did he play? Did he play Count Batoffi?
Yes, that's the one, Count Batoffi.
Yeah.
He played so many roles, and he played them all well.
He did. Fair David was a friend, and was a fellow actor. Took me under his, wing. He was with a beautiful gal back then, as I recall, Valerie French. But anyway, Fair and I later did a miniseries together. I think he played J. Edgar Hoover in a piece we did. Anyway, Fair was quite terrific. We did, there were a lot of good actors.
Oh, yes, there was.
You think back to Joan Bennett, and Joan's father, Richard, been an actor, and her sister, Constance, I think. But Joan never even really wanted to be an actor when she first started. And
really?
Then, her father was behind a lot of that. But then she did, and she was quite wonderful. As I recall, she even tested, going through some rough times, tested for Gone with the Wind. But when she lived out here in Los Angeles, and she had some trouble, with her ex-beau and whatever. That didn't end well. He was shot, but Humphrey Bogart took up for Jane and hired her on in one of his films right away. But she decided then and there to come back to New York City. And it was because of her, because of Joan, that Dark Shadows was able to get off the ground. I think she was the anchor pin there.
I love that.
So that's what we did. And she and we became great friends. And we were up at her house. We'd go to her house for dinner once or twice. She was a grand gal. And then there was Grayson Hall.
Oh, she's absolutely another wonderful talent.
Oh, my God, yes. And Grayson, again, took me under her wing. And her husband was the writer on the show, Sam Hall. And that was very special.
I don't think there is such a thing from Grayson Hall as a bad performance. I don't think I've ever seen her do anything, whether in movies, TV, where she's not always on her game.
Yeah. She was committed and true, and I don't know, a special person.
Oh, exactly. And it's, I own the coffin set of Dark Shadows. So I've watched like all the episodes, over the years. And it's just something when you can see, and people don't realize how special some of these actors were, like Joan Bennett coming into it. Because I look back and it's like, oh, let me see what their past history was, and you see the body of the work, and you realize how talented and what a what's the word I'm saying? What a get it was for Dan Curtis to get these people in there.
All of those people, Stephen, Joan Benowitz had been she was a major Hollywood, she was a major star. I mean, out here in the old days, if you weren't invited to Joan's house on Sundays, you know, you cherished that invitation. But Grayson Hall also was a wonderful theater actor. Bayard David, Humbert, you know,
Lewis.
just so many that I'm still friends with today. Chris Pennick, Jim Storm. There was Virginia Vestoff, Donna McKechnie. Just so many people that came through that we got to do scenes with, you know, during those days. And before Quentin ever appeared on Dark Shadows, the wonderful actors that were there, you know, Don Briscoe, just so many, you know.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Jonathan Frid.
Jonathan. In fact, not long ago, I went through a letter that Jonathan had sent me, and I sent him a letter. You know, Jonathan and I never had one disagreement during the whole time we were together. And our last time together was Tim Burton was doing a Dark Shadows movie with Johnny Depp.
Yep.
And Tim wanted some of us, Catherine, myself, Jonathan, Laura, to come over to London and just make an appearance. So that's what we did, because we just, I've always liked Tim Burton, and I'm still a fan of Johnny Depp. And so we did that. And that's one of the last times I saw Jonathan. You know, was during those few days in London. But he and I, we recorded the Dark Shadows album together. I did the words to Quentin's theme, and he was on it. So anyway, he was special and loved his home up in Canada.
I was going to say, it was like the casting.
He was wonderful. You know, he went to Yale Drama School.
Yes.
He was a wonderful Shakespearean actor.
And he was going to, I think if I remember correctly, he was going to go into teaching at college, and that's when the Dark Shadows hit, and that's what led him into a role that was only supposed to be for a few weeks to years.
Yes. You got it. He's, yeah. Anyway, it was a special group.
It was. And when Dark Shadows, the series ended, there were, of course, one movie was done during the series, House of Dark Shadows. Yeah. And then the movie that you were in, Night of Dark Shadows, was at the end of the run.
Yeah.
Any memories of Night of Dark Shadows that you want to share? Because that one, you know, you have to play two different types of roles, Quentin and Charles Collins.
Right.
And it's a ghost story. And of course, you had regulars from you got to give Dan Curtis credit. He was very loyal to his actors, because Laura Parker, Kate Jackson, John Carlin, and that's just a few. Jim Storm, Grayson Hall, were all in the movie.
John Carlin wasn't he special? Willie Lomas. Johnny was a dear friend. Elle or Kate, everybody. We did that, the second film, because I can't remember what happened. Either Jonathan didn't want to do another one or whatever. But anyway, it fell to me. So we went up to Greystone Mansion in Tarrytown, New York to film it. Again, everything went well, except when the film ended. They cut it together out at MGM. Apparently, they wanted it to fit on a double bill with the first one. This is what I was told, I believe. And they needed to cut the second film, a lot of it out. And Dan felt and Sam Hall, it was awful for Sam that they had cut the heart out of the film. So a few years ago, as I understand, they went back, found some old footage, and they put it back together again. Now, whether or not it'll ever see the light of day, I don't know. But they had to find the soundtrack and everything. And apparently out in somewhere in Kansas or somewhere out there, there's a vault out there where they found some old footage. But they put it back together, and who knows? Maybe I get to see it again. But Stephen, I have not seen that film since we finished it, and I'm not even sure I saw it then. To tell you the honest to God truth.
It's an interesting film, and I think, as you said, something like 30 minutes, 35 minutes were cut out of it. And any movie that gets that much time cut out is going to be affected in not a positive way.
Yeah, well,
and I'm hoping
you probably know more about it than I do.
Well, I mean, it's just there's parts there I wish were more fleshed out, and I'm really hoping that they do put that footage that they found in, and that way, you know, we can incorporate it and see, oh, this is what the original vision was,
right.
And that would be awesome if that does happen. And who knows? I mean, they're always finding stuff, you know, hidden gems, lost silent films. I mean, things always are popping up all the time, it seems.
Yeah, where was he?
Now, you followed Night of Dark Shadows up with Up the Sandbox with Barbara Streisand, where you played her husband.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Miss Streisand?
Miss Streisand is wonderful. What can I say? She was special. All she wanted to do ever was to make a good film or to make a good record, sing a great song, bring her magic to it, what I called magic. She was wonderful, is wonderful. Her heart is, she's got a big heart. I can't tell you.
I've always enjoyed her singing and her comedic timing. And of course, later on, when she finally got to start directing, it was, she is a wonderful talent, you know, with so many different things. And I know some people, as you were saying, get upset when she wants to make a good film. People are like, oh, she's too perfectionistic or whatever. It's her film.
No.
I think it's a good thing to try to put out your best work.
Yeah, absolutely not. And she's one of the most caring people around. Whether or not that's, you know, who knows what goes on and you know, but she's one of the most darling, caring people to this day.
I'm a firm believer that people that want to look for bad find bad. People that want to look for good find good. I mean, it's like the Pollyanna type syndrome for me. It's you can look for the bad and always see it. Or you can look for the good and find good out of it.
We got along great then, and I was doing a play in New York when I was offered that film, so I had to leave the play to do the film, but it worked out all right.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, it's. I know critically it was very acclaimed, and it didn't do as well in the box office. But sometimes things just don't hit at the right moment. It was a different kind of film. Yep.
Irvin Kershner directed it. And first, as I recall, didn't he do Empire Strikes Back?
Ooh.
Second Star Wars film? I don't know. I think so.
I'm checking as you talk. Yes, he did The Empire Strikes Back, which a lot of people consider the best Star Wars film.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And, but in both instances, he had good scripts. Paul Zindel, who had written a play, that helped out with the sandbox theme. Irwin Winkler. It was a producing team. Bob Chartoff and Irwin Winkler produced Up the Sandbox. Irwin was special. And, you know, it was just a good shoot, good time. And I was blessed. I was blessed to, you know, to be a part of that because I felt it was after all said and done, it was a lovely film, and I was happy to be a part of that.
And that's the reason I was bringing this film up, because I think it's one of those that a lot of people don't even know about. And one of the things that we try to do on our podcast is we'll pick different films depending on what we roll as genre. So it's called diecast.
Yeah.
And,
right.
You know, Up at the Sandbox is one of those things, like, you know, depending on how the die rolls go, I could and then my two children watch it with me, my older two, and then it gets out there in the public, and then hopefully people will be like, oh, let me give this one a try, you know, and that's the whole point, is to bring some love to things that people forget about.
Yeah.
Now,
well, maybe some folks will find it again if they hear this. Hey.
Well, that's the whole. I mean, you think about it. You have her fans. You have your fans, and somebody's bound to be like, oh, we got to get this film or look at it at least to see. You know, that's the good thing about fans of an actor, that they'll usually will look for their other work, and yes, it's not Quentin Collins, but that's it's David Selby. You're an actor. You know, you played many different roles. It's not just because you are not the character. You are you.
No. Anyway, it was a good film. And Gordon Willis filmed, shot The Godfather. Gordon Willis was our cinematographer. So that gives you a clue the kind of people we had involved with that.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, I think I'm a firm believer in, if you get a good director, a good script, good actors, good cinematography, you usually are going to have a winner. You know,
yeah.
Now,
hello,
you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was shortly after this, but eventually in 1982, you moved to your other big TV series, Falcon Crest, playing Richard Channing, which I think you missed the first season, but you were in all the rest of the seasons. I think every single episode for those 8 seasons.
Yeah. The 8 or 9 seasons I did. Well, what happened back then, I wasn't available. Well, they were going to do that show, you know, Lorimar Productions, Lorimar, under Merv Adelson and a fellow named Lee Rich. But basically, Merv was the man there, and Lee. But Merv, we had a nice relationship, and they had asked me to do a few things, and I'd been unable to because of conflicts with with the schedule, with the work I was doing. So they needed help with a show called Flamingo Road, and I was in Boston doing a play, and we were going to move the play down to Stratford for a while, where it had started. This is with a wonderful actress, Jane Alexander, and her husband was the director of it, Ed Sheeran. And anyway, Jane said, I got a visit from somebody, and after a show, we were at the Huntington Hartford up in Boston. And Jane said, why don't you do it? Do it. And I'll tell Ed, her husband was the director of the show. So when we got back down to the theater down in Connecticut, I decided, yes, I'll go to California. So that's pretty much right away I did. I went to, we went off to start that project. And that was Flamingo Road. And then out of Flamingo Road, which wasn't going to last, but there's some good friends there, including Mark Harmon, I think Stella Stevens, Barbara Rush. Just so many. Anyway, we did, I got a visit one day from a couple of writers, and my dear friend, Earl Hamner. And years before, I'd done an episode of The Walton. And Earl came to see me. on the soundstage at Warner Brothers. And so a couple of writers came over on the day I was leaving. We were shutting down Flamingo Road. I was going back to New York. And a couple of writers, Henry Stern, Stephen Black, came over and said, David, we're going to see you real soon. So I got back to New York. I wasn't there a week when I got a call from Earl. And Earl said, hey, why don't you read this book? It was about a tycoon. What's the famous tycoon's name?
Onassis?
No, this guy lived up in, he has a famous house up here in California. He built this mansion. Anyway, it was that. And then I read Ted Turner's father, about Ted Turner. And I read all of that. And this was the character of Richard Channing. And Earl said, just read about these hard, these business people. So I did. The first scene, when I came to California, I flew right to Napa.
Mm-hmm.
And my first scene was with Jane Wyman. And from that moment on, Jane and I became great friends. So I was very, delighted with her help. And Earl was there at the time. And then first couple of seasons, few seasons, he wasn't with us. Earl wasn't, because he had other shows. But after shooting in Napa, we came down to L.A. But every year we go back to Napa for about 6 weeks and do all our location shooting for the first half of the season. Then we come down to L.A. to the studios and do the interior for those shows. And then, the rest of it would be down here. But every year we went up to Napa. But anyway, that's how that started. And Richard Channing, I was blessed with a great number of actors that came onto that show. And they were very, if you wanted a certain actor to come on or whatever, they would try to get that actor for you.
Mm-hmm.
Ann Archer came on to do some episodes. There was Lana Turner, and Lana's daughter was wonderful, as I loved Lana too. Now, she and Jane may have had some difficulties here and there, but the people that were on that show, from I think it was Leslie Caron, Gina Lollobrigida, all of the people.
Yeah, I know. One of the person I know you talked about Jane Wyman. Another actor, Sarah Douglas. I've always enjoyed,
yeah.
And she's always good at playing strong female characters, and sometimes they're evil, or people portray them as evil, but she does such a good job of it. What was it like working with her?
Sarah and I got to have a lot of scenes together, as I recall. And, oh man, there were just so many, just so many fine actors. Even E.G. Marshall was on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think he played my father, actually, in a couple of episodes, just right there at the beginning when I was on. And Cesar Romero. You remember Cesar?
Oh, everybody. I mean, what can you say?
We called him Butch. That was his name. I called him Butch.
I always remember him as the Joker from, the Batman series. And
Yeah.
but I've seen him in other work too, and again, he does such a great job.
Mel Ferrar.
Oh, Mel
Remember
Ferrar.
Mel Ferrar?
Yes.
Yeah. Cliff Robertson.
I mean,
Kim Novak.
That the series had just about like everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was Jane Greer, who was a good friend of Joan Bennett. Anyway.
Sometimes
yeah.
I think you've been so blessed to have so many of these different actors early on and later on to work with. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yes, I've been blessed. I have. And I'm not a Pollyanna. But I never had there was never a disagreement. There were only hugs and kisses and lunches together, dinners together. Let's do this. Let's do that. Just good support and respect for each other. It was, and that's the way those sets were.
And that's the amazing thing. And I think when you have a place where you go to work and everybody is enjoying themselves, it makes it a lot easier. But then when you're going to a place and nobody wants to be there, or somebody's having a tip and it's like, and then it makes it, you don't want to go, and it puts you in a negative frame of mind. So when you're already waking up and you're like, oh yeah, I'm ready to, you're in a positive frame, it makes the performances that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. And the directors of the show, that came on. Anyway.
Now in the last decade, you've had some interesting, again, for anybody who looks at David's IMDb page, it's a long list.
I avoid that.
which just shows you he's always working because he's always in demand. I mean, if people didn't like him, they wouldn't be hiring him. And thankfully for us that are fans of your work, you're all over the place. Like we've mentioned a few things, in horror, you've been in the drama, but you've also done voice work for Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, where you played the voice of Commissioner Gordon.
Yes, I love that. I wanted to do that very much because I wasn't in the movies or anything. But boy, when that came along, I jumped at it because that meant so much to me from my days when I was a kid. It just was very important.
So as a kid, you were a fan of the Batman comic book?
Oh my God, I was a fan of Batman, Superman. All of those comics.
I could just imagine. I own both parts, so at home and stuff like that. But I didn't realize at the time until I was prepping to interview you that you were the voice of Commissioner Gordon. It was, and I was just like, wait a minute, what? How did I not notice that? I'm sticking it back in. I gotta be, this is.
Yeah.
So it was one of those pleasant surprises when you're looking at somebody's page and you're just like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you enjoy it.
Well, not only did I enjoy it, but both my all my children, all three of them. One of them doesn't do the podcast with us, but all three of them enjoy the animated DC work. And yeah. So and when I was telling them, I was like, oh yeah, I'm interviewing so and so, and they're like, oh, what did he do? And I'm like, he was in Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, and then I was able to tell them about the other stuff, but it was just like that was like. They're like, he was, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So I mean, it's just you have fans from all different types of age groups, from all different types of things.
Yeah, I'm thankful for each and every one of them, Stephen.
Now, last year you had 2 movies that came out that are very good and totally different topics. One of them, Black Fork, is,
Yes.
And I'm to give you a little background about myself. I used to work at a college campus, and I used to be the community outreach officer. And one of the things I worked with the that health department in their area was about the opiate addiction.
Yeah.
And people always think it's not them, but it's so rampant all over, for all different age groups, all different. It doesn't matter. Anybody can get addicted to opiates. And I didn't know if you want to talk about this movie, because it's a very powerful movie.
Yeah. No, it's Back Fork was produced by my dear friend Bob Kennel, who is a lovely, not just producer, writer, director, but he produced it. And then Josh Stewart, the star of it, Josh directed. And it was a film, as soon as I read it, I knew I had to do. We knew that, we wanted to be a part of that. So we took a flight, got to Morgantown, West Virginia, where we stayed while we were shooting up in the country, up in Preston County. And we filmed that. And there were some, just again, terrific actors that you may not know, but we were all there together working on a project that we wanted. And the film, wasn't made for a lot of money, but the budget was okay. So we did it. And for the opioid crisis that certainly faced Southern Appalachia, it's a lovely, it's a tough story, but anyway.
And that's what I mean. It's a very powerful movie. And I appreciate movies like this because it really puts points home in a different way, because people, you read, but you don't have any visual referencing. And I think so many of us, when they have something visual to go with what they're reading in the newspapers and stuff like that, it makes it more, oh, now I can get the idea. Now I can understand what they're talking about.
Right. But I'm glad you felt that way or feel that way about it.
And actually, I guess for you, it was like a homecoming in a sense, going back to your hometown.
Yeah, going back to my hometown. That's right. We were so busy shooting the film, I never got to see anybody hardly. I did see a few friends, during that time. After the film wrapped, we stayed around for 2 or 3 days to see some old friends. And then, but I always like going back to West Virginia. In fact, that's what my presentation on Wednesday is about. I'm reading from a lot of my books and things. It's about, a place where I grew up.
Yeah.
Anyway, we did that film, and then what was it you mentioned in the other film?
The other film is Loon Lake, which is for those that haven't seen it, it's a psychological horror film.
Yeah.
And
I get to play 2 roles.
Yes, you do. 2 good roles. You get to play the Pastor Owen Jansen and Emery Jansen.
Emery. That's right.
So you're in it's almost like a Dark Shadows thing in a sense. You're in the past and the present.
Yeah. But I love playing them both roles. And that was shot up in Minnesota. So we went up there and shot that. Goodness, just a little over a year ago. Yeah, a year ago. Oh, well, it's over a year ago. But anyway, we did that, and one of the nice things about it, I got to do this scene with Catherine Scott, who played the preacher's wife.
Yeah.
And course, Catherine, Dark Shadows alum, dear friend of Dan Curtis. So that was lovely to get to do that with Catherine. And with the director, a long time, Ansel.
Ansel Farage.
Yep. Ansel Farage, yep. So that was all special. And again, this one especially was not made for very much money. But we were able to shoot it on location in Minnesota. And we look forward to following it up with another film whenever this pandemic is, allows us to do so.
And I will say, a film, Ansel was able to get a lot on the film. That was, as you said, it was low budget. He made it look like a much bigger production. And I think it was because it was on location. Having those different sites really added a lot to it. And of course, I mean, you got to work with another young actor, Nathan Wilson.
Yes, Nate. Dear Nate. Yep. In fact, his parents lived up in Minnesota at that time, and they were very special. In fact, many times I had breakfast over at his parents' house. And probably a few lunches.
Ansel told me that when they were filming in Minnesota, that the townspeople just embraced them, and it was.
Oh yeah, the townspeople were terrific. Everybody was. In fact, that's why I would tell you the truth. I'd sort of love to go back there and shoot again.
Oh, I wish you would. It doesn't even have to be a continuation of this story. It could be another story. I just want to see you. I just like seeing your work, especially when you're working with Ansel. Now, one of the things he actually wanted me to ask you, if I remember him telling me correctly, was what was it like for you, the Dark Shadows, from the TV show? As we know, Ansel, for those who listen to his interview, he's a huge fan of the Dark Shadows show and the movies. What was it like for you working with him, from your perspective? Here you're working with these guys that watched you, and now they're working, as when they were young, and now they're working with you. And I think Dark Shadows, if I remember correctly, was one of the main reasons Ansel became a director.
Yeah. You know something, Stephen? Well, all of that is, so I never, while we were shooting, I swear, I never, ever, I don't recall until Catherine and I were doing that scene, but even Catherine and I didn't. I never thought about Ansel and Dark Shadows together. I was working for this director, with this director. I never thought, I promise you, it never even, And Ansel and I, to this day, have never really discussed, the Dark Shadows thing extensively. So our concern was making Loon Lake, totally. And I still love that character of Emery.
When I watched the movie, I think it was back in January or February of this year. And because it's on Amazon Prime, for those that don't know, it's readily available for anybody to watch. I knew you were the Reverend. It took me a while to figure out you were Emery also.
Well, that's what's so special to me. I love that.
So
the fact that, hey, for a little bit, I fooled you.
It wasn't just a little bit. It was for a good while. You really embraced that role, and I think it's because the total. I think costuming is everything, because I think once you got in that costume, you embodied that role, and it's totally different. One was more the Reverend seemed to be more straight lace, more proper and prim.
Yeah,
and Emery was the average guy you would see at a gas station, so to speak. You know.
Yeah, that's right. But they were both wonderful, and I enjoyed it so much that Ansel knows and Nate knows that I'm on board for whatever they want to do. If, you know, but we're in a rough time now.
Well, yes, we are. I know. That's the everything is on hold, and we got to solve issues that are going on nowadays. And for those that don't know, we're recording this on June 15th, 2020. So that way people have an idea when they're listening, like what we're talking about, everybody can figure out.
Right.
And my thing is always been, if somebody spills milk, you got to clean it up, solve it, and then worry about the blame.
Yeah.
But let's solve this issue. Let's get these things taken care of, and let's move on as a country.
I agree with you completely, and I couldn't wind up our little conversation here, which I'm more than willing and happy to do another one at some point. But I agree with you completely. You know, something when you just said that, it reminds me, Stephen, of what you just said. And I'm gonna, if you'll forgive me, or whatever, that's not quite the word, but if you'll hold in there, I want to read you something.
Oh, go for it.
This is from Lincoln's second inaugural speech. I'm even going to read it in Lincoln's voice, which was high-pitched, a high-pitched voice. This is from the original manuscript of the second inaugural. Anyway, of Lincoln's, he wrote it. And I'm only going to read to you the last paragraph.
Okay.
Here we go. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and a lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Oh, you can indulge all you want. I mean, I'm not gonna stop your microphone.
Anyway,
but I want to thank you for all the roles that you've done and bringing to life a lot of these characters, like Lincoln, like Quentin, like Richard, like Bill. I know you did one horror film. You had a guy called Fletcher. I mean, you did so many different ones.
Yeah.
and of course, Commissioner Gordon. I can't forget Commissioner Gordon, but
no.
But it's it brings joy, or it brings issues out there. Like I said, people need to know, and but without people inhabiting that character and bringing it to life in a good way, in a proper way, or whatever way you want to look at it, you did that. You did an excellent job, and your work, obviously is going to live on for a long time. And I can't wait to interview you again for the stuff you have coming out later, especially if you have more work with Ansel, and we can always do, an interview for that if you wish. But it's just, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephen. And we'll talk again about things down the road if you want to. Anyway, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too.
So I'll take care of yourself, and we'll talk later.